What's up, pet people? My name is Alexia and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video we're going to be doing a quick little how-to on how to set up a enclosure and a colony for isopods. Basically what I'm going to go over is what isopods are, what they're useful for, and then how to make your own little culture. That way you don't have to repeatedly keep buying them for your bioactive vivariums, and instead you can just breed them on your own. First thing I'm going to say before we jump right into the video is that isopods are considered to be insects. Even though they're in the crustacean family, they are still considered to be insects of sorts. Therefore, if you do not like bugs, I recommend not watching this video. Or if you do want to learn something about isopods but don't actually want to see the bugs, I will include timestamps down below for whenever I do show them. That way you can skip ahead, listen to the parts you need to, but not actually have to view the insects themselves. So yeah, I hope you guys are interested in this, and please keep watching. Alright, so before we get into the how to make the culture, I'm going to quickly go over what an isopod is. Basically, the little roly-polies that you remember messing with as kids, yeah, that's an isopod. They're tiny crustaceans that are used to clean up debris, rotting plant material, and just basically make sure that the soil stays free of toxic nitrates and things that are not good for your plants and or reptiles. I highly recommend that if you are a reptile owner, or if you are getting into the reptile hobby, or if you're even just wanting to make a nice little bioactive vivarium just to look at, I recommend learning how to make your own isopod culture. That way you do not have to repeatedly buy isopods from outside sources, and you can just breed them and grow them on your own at home. Now, the first thing about isopods that you need to know for your culture is the type of isopod you are going to get. There are many different types of isopods, and I am going to recommend my favorite two, and I'm going to actually show you one of them that I'm using in a culture right now, and then the other one I will not be showing you because the entire culture is actually in my tank. That the video for that is linked up above. Anyway, moving on from that, so yeah, getting into the different types of isopods. The most commonly used type of isopod in bioactive vivariums, which I have in my vivarium, is dwarf white isopods. Now, these are relatively easy and quick breeding isopods. They're so quick breeding, in fact, that they recommend that you very frequently split them up into other vivariums and stuff. So if you don't want to possibly have your culture overran, or you have too many in the culture, I recommend not starting out with dwarf whites as your starter colony per se. Okay, so now looking at the different variants outside of dwarf white isopods, we are going to talk about the ones I have and then some other variants. Now, the ones that I have, the Porcellio, Scaber, orange isopods, are a little bit bigger variation. In fact, they're called giant orange isopods, the ones that I have. There are basically three sizes of isopods. There's the dwarf, there's the normal, and then there's the giant ones. Whenever you're looking at your vivarium, one of the things that you need to remember is what type of creatures going into your vivarium, how many plants you're going to have, how much substrate, like layers of substrate you're going to have. That all needs to be taken into account when thinking about what type of isopods you want. Typically, I don't recommend mixing your smaller isopods with your giant isopods. Definitely don't recommend mixing your dwarf with your giant. I have read multiple articles about isopods eating one another if they run out of food sources, and the easiest way to prevent that is to make sure that there's always food sources. You can even buy isopod grub mix off of Josh's Frogs for your isopods to make sure that they don't end up becoming cannibalistic. I have also read one article about isopods eating your reptile in cases of severe starvation, but overall I don't think that's a big fear you need. If you are afraid of that though, I do recommend going with these smaller isopods versus the giant ones. Okay, so real quick, just so you can see some of the different types, I'm going to name them off, show you a picture, and then put their actual full name on the picture so that you can see what they look like, just in case you want to get them before we actually put the culture together. So we're going to start off with the zebra isopods. As you can see, they have very vivid stripes, kind of like a zebra. Pretty sure that's where they got their name, obviously. They have their black and white stripes. They are very easy to identify, and I feel like in a dark vivarium, they would be very easy to see and easier to watch and observe and make sure they're breeding and eating and taking care of the things they need to. Dairy cow, I feel like, is close behind that one. They're very similar in size, and these are both slow breeding ones. Dairy cow isopods are a little bit darker. As you can see, they kind of have a darker tan color and then dark brown spots. And I feel like, again, in a dark vivarium, those would be a little bit more difficult to see, but most of the time isopods will be underground anyway, so you shouldn't really have to worry about that. Next is Dalmation isopods. By the way, all of these are completely available on Josh's Frogs. Anyway, next is Dalmation isopods. They are also another black and white variant. Same size as the zebra and the dairy cow. Only thing about these is I've read that they end up breeding a little bit faster than the dairy cow. I'm not sure about zebra in comparison, but they're just another, pretty variant that you can get of the isopods. Next we have the powder blue isopods. Now, powder blue is basically just a light version of your normal standard the isopods that you would walk outside and see on your sidewalk, the dark gray ones. Yeah, powder blue's like a color shade below that. They're not quite white, but they're not really gray either. Not really sure why they're called blue either, because they're definitely not blue, but powder blue isopods, those are the same size as the others. Breeding is relatively quick as well. The only thing I think I read about those is that they do, they are one of the slower growing species, so once they breed, they do take a while to reach maturity. After this, we're going to be viewing the powder orange isopods. They're basically just a bright orange variant of the powder blue. They are the same size as the powder blue. They're not the giant ones like I have, but the giant ones that I have do look very, very similar. They're the same color. It's just difference in size and breeding speed. And yeah, I think that's all of the main ones that are used in vivariums. Oh, actually I lied. Hold on, before we get into that. The giant canyon. There are two main types of giant isopods, and the ones that I use are the giant Porcellio orange, and then there's the giant canyon isopods. Canyons are darker and closer to a black than a brown, and then the orange is obviously bright orange. Alright, so now that my camera died and I finally got that fixed and have everything back to normal, we're going to get into the how to set up a culture, actual how-to part of the video. So anyway, first thing you're going to need is a shoebox sized tub. This is what I'm using right now. And you're going to poke holes in the lid to make sure that they can breathe. Now, the thing about isopods is they can't climb the plastic edges of the box, and especially if you have it moistened like you're supposed to, they're not going to get out or climb through the little holes, so you don't have to worry about that. As you can see, I put on here, well, I didn't put the start date, but I put the type of isopods in this culture as well as the amount that I started out with. As you can see, I started out with 10 of them, and right now, I counted the other day, I have about 50. Which is very good for me because I actually, like I said, split these up amongst my vivariums, and I also sell isopods for some research stuff going on at my university. Moving on from that, looking into your isopod culture box, I took out a piece of corkwood that was in here. I had corkwood covering this. Looking into your isopod culture box, you should be able to see the different types of soil I have in here. I have a bioactive mix with cypress mulch just to make sure that it doesn't get too compacted and there's not a whole lot of mold growth in here. It's okay if there's some mold growth just because isopods generally take care of that. That's what they do, and that's why they're beneficial to your vivarium. One thing you need to remember whenever having an isopod culture is that you need to have leaf litter in there and different types of things that they could hide under. Like I said, cork bark works really well, and the leaf litter works really well, not only as food, as you can see they've been eating it, but as shelter as well. You can probably see that the sides are pretty misted down. I mist my enclosure for isopods about once a week. Just make sure that they have a good maintained humidity. So once you poke your holes in your box, you're going to obviously put your substrate blend into it, and then you're going to put your isopods in there. Now generally it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the larger breeds of isopods to start breeding, whereas the smaller ones it takes a little less time. You can buy, like I said earlier, a food mix where you make little blocks of food for your isopods, or you can use fresh produce. I choose using fresh produce for my isopods. They've been doing just fine with that. They've been breeding really well. As I said, I started with 10 and now I have 50. And I started this colony 3 months ago, so could be going quicker. Obviously 50 is only in the amount of full grown adults that I could count. I don't count the babies whenever I'm going through the box just because it's harder and they move a lot more than the adults in my opinion. One thing about your colony though is it needs to be kept in a dark place. So I just keep this box right here underneath my bed. It's extremely easy to remember and take care of and make sure that they're breeding well. And it's also just easier to keep track of humidity and everything if you have it in a dark place where it's easy to be kept damp. That's the type of lifestyle that isopods like. Okay, so I know that was a really quick video and I just kind of did a here's how you grow / breed isopods in a really quick little video. I will do a more in-depth one in the future. I just wanted to put that out there because I have had some people asking me about my isopods on Twitter and whatnot. If you haven't followed my Twitter, that'll be linked at the end of the video, by the way. But yeah, a lot of people have been asking me, and I've been meaning to put out some new content for you guys. Real quick, gonna touch base on all of that. I do have a lot of really fun projects planned. I just got behind again with the semester starting and everything. College is really difficult, but I have also decided I need to take more time for YouTube and to do what I want to do. So if you guys will just bear with me, I promise I have tons of fun videos coming out. I actually have a bioactive vivarium build that I'm in the process of doing that I will end up showing you guys hopefully in 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, just thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I'm pretty good at replying. If I didn't cover something, or if you want to hear something more in-depth with isopods in another video, let me know, and I'll make sure to do that. But yeah, thank you for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you're not already, and give today's video a big thumbs up. Thank you.